It is 7 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business will be to welcome Jack Kelly, who is the new Grafton Housing Authority member, replacing our good friend Jim Gallagher. And you have big shoes, very big shoes, literally big shoes.
Unfillable, in my
To
opinion.
fill. We know you'll do a good job, and we appreciate your willingness to step into his role and work with Eric and our committee on affordable housing issues in Grafton.
Absolutely, thank you for the opportunity.
Welcome. Moving on to Treasurer's Report.
So we have it right in front of us, and Ken, wow, this is loud. Ken, John and I met with the town accountant, Mary Loria, earlier this week, just to go over all of the amounts. So we've added on here, you'll see everything in green, our estimated amounts for our surcharge estimate, 594,070. We decided to go with a low estimate on the state match based on input that was given to us by the coalition. So normally we're probably around 34, 33. This year we're going with 21.2. Hopefully it comes back higher than that, but better to have it come back higher later than overestimate. And then we have our interest income too, based on that. It's a more conservative number. So everything in green is your estimate. So our remaining fiscal year 24 budgeted reserve is 173,207 based on the estimates above. We've got carried over initial undesignated fund balance of 185,677, leaving us remaining fiscal year 24 funds available for any CPA purpose at 358,884. We've got also in here, you'll see the amounts for the warrants that we're anticipating for this year. So you've got Norcross Park in there, you've got the Institute Wood Design and Engineering, and you've got the rental assistance for the affordable housing. In addition to that, down below, you'll have the amount for the bond for the townhouse. You'll see that it's 70, where is it? There it is, 72.1. So long and short is the remaining fiscal year 2024 funds available for all CPA purposes at 617,472 based on these estimates. And everything I just went over is essentially in that summary at the bottom. Anyone have any questions?
Better number than I was looking at our last meeting.
Pardon?
I said better number than we were looking at our last meeting.
Actually, well, it's, yeah,
Because of the Institute Woods.
that's
change.
because of the Institute project.
I move we accept Treasurer's report.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Do I have any do we have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare it carried unanimously. Clerk's report. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as drafted.
I have discussion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I'll discuss. I noticed that there is one item on, what did I just do with that? There. On line 151, the point was that the trail can be created without the switchbacks. And there's some saying negative.
So instead of saying with, it should be without.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I declare the motion carried unanimously. Bruce is here, so I'm going to have him speak briefly on if you want to come up, I think the microphone should be working, on the Affordable Housing Trust report, use of CPA funds for the past year, so on and so forth.
Sure, it's very straightforward. I apologize for the confusion before. The ZPA meeting and the public hearing got postponed because there was too many people,
Oh,
so it didn't actually go. So last year for CPA expenditures from the trust, there aren't any. We used Pulte funds for basically the housing production plan, engineering, some other spec work, and then for the 25 Worcester Street projects, we got a grant from Mass Housing, and they kind of did all the prep work and admin work for the RFP for 25 Worcester Street. So they brought their own engineers in and handled everything, not in its entirety, but all the heavy lifting. So currently, that's our one project that we're actively participating in. The RFP goes till April 16th, I believe. We have about 21 people that have inquired, which should puzzle out to be 7 or 8 bids, or what we would hope to see is 7, 8 bids. So we'll see how that goes. The economic environment for builders, especially in that range, is a little bit tough, as you can see from some of the other developments in town that have kind of hit the pause button. So that's pretty much all. The biggest thing we have going on now, which we're actively working on, is the housing production plan. So it's due. We've engaged Karen Soderberg. She was the only bidder. Again, we use Pulte money for that as well. And so she'll be handling the housing production plan. Should be done sometime in May, perhaps a little later.
is that the same or different from maybe 10 years ago? They did it at the South Grafton Community House.
Yep.
Where you had the consultant. So that was the production plan. So is this an updated version or is this a whole?
It has to be
new-
done every 5 years. It needs to be redone. So the process is essentially she'll start to go on all the department heads, do an assessment. It's really important this time because we can incorporate the new census data and material. She'll go around to make sure that she acquires all the information from, the various department heads. I believe she spent a lot of time with Fiona in the planning office, which is, of course, her primary area. And then she'll hold a bunch of public hearings and meetings, which is basically community outreach meetings and input. And then eventually it gets packaged up, goes through the trust over to the select board, and they'll probably have their own process there. I, of course, won't speak for them, but I think when we did it in the past, it was simply came from the trust and we voted on it and let the trust handle the public outreach piece. But they may want to do some more.
When was the last time it was updated?
Well, that's 5 years ago now.
So it's like, it's just like clockwork. Every 5 years you just.
Yeah, so
have to do it.
it's important when you're dealing with DHCD and, when you're monitoring SHI. There's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of different departments on the state level that look at it, but it's essential for making sure that we get credit for everything that we're doing in town.
Bruce, I'm sorry, what is her name again?
Karen Soderberg.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
What's our SHI right now before it's out? Like,
So at our SHI now, I can't speak to the exact number. It's in 7,000s. Do they have a new number?
We haven't gotten the recent updates with APINE, we haven't gotten that new percentage yet.
All right.
And we're not gonna, Karen said that she'll be able to provide the finalized numbers DHCD said it would be May, but Karen was using the year-round count as 7,000.
It won't be that,
7,750 units, yeah.
the final number won't be far, it won't stray from that.
do you know what we are before that though? Like,
I believe we're sitting somewhere between 5 and 6% for, if you were to add the 399 units from Pine Street, that pushed us up to 9%. But as everybody should be aware, the safe harbor status was taken away by DHCD a couple weeks ago because the permit wasn't pulled for Pine Street, so that's in a kind of a holding pattern. So it doesn't get counted for safe harbor at this point.
So the work that they've done to bulldoze everything, that doesn't count for
It did, we got a year of safe harbor out of it. Typically, when you go past a certain quota, so in 1 year, if you produce enough units to measure 2% of your overall requirement, the 10% requirement, you're given 2 years of safe harbor as opposed to 1. So that expired in March, they were not willing to extend it.
When was the last time that whoever that owns it now did actual work at that site? It's been 6 months or longer, or?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I mean, most of it was demo. We, as the trust, dealt with GSX on the Upton Street project up on the center of town. But they're unrelated projects under the same, corporation. So we don't have much insight into what they're doing. We do know that they were looking for financing, and it appears they're looking for financing now. But whatever they had was supposed to be closed last November, and however it worked out.
Does it look like the project that they had proposed, it's going away and somebody will have to start over, or somebody will pick up?
I really couldn't speak to that. My guess is they're gonna, they're throwing the nets out there to find who they can now at this point. But what they come up with could be a different project. It probably would be the same because it's shovel-ready, but who's to know?
My current understanding of that, just to say, is that it hasn't had any work for at least 6 months.
Oh, at least.
Or at
I go
least-
by it all the time.
Yeah, at least 6 months, maybe even like 9.
Yep.
And then they have not pulled any permits for actually doing any construction on it. They just did the demo permits.
Okay.
And then my understanding is they're, as Bruce said, looking for funding, which they're, like I said, this is secondhand knowledge kind of a thing, but they could be open to purchase, they could be open to actually just getting some funding to invest in it. And in theory, where they are now, they have a, permit that's been approved for their current design. I haven't heard anything that's gonna be changed at this point, but.
So somebody could say, okay, we'll buy this or whatever, and go exactly with the plan that
Yes,
was proposed. So that's still a possibility.
that is definitely still a possibility. Anyone that purchases it would be able to use the approved plan with the approved conditions.
Without
to-
any,
Without, subject to deadlines, I'd have to double check on the term, how it was written, but they'd be able to use that as a, buildable plan and buildable, solution.
So,
They-
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
finish.
Yeah, they could always, anybody, including them, could come back and say, we want to modify this plan.
Changes, right.
Here's, a proposal for a modification, and that could be anything, but.
sure. Okay.
Yeah, and they have a valid order of condition out there on the site, so, and that's good for another couple of years.
Okay. Any other questions for Bruce?
Do you want me to hang around for the rental assistance thing in case a question needs to be fielded, or is that
Up to you, I
happening now? or-
Because we're going right into those, so it shouldn't be, we've got a couple other people here as well, so,
Okay, well, I tell you what, I'll go sit in the field.
okay,
So I'm not stepping on toes.
Thanks, Bruce.
okay. Fiona, sorry. You're up.
Hello, Chair Stevens, members of the committee. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time and attention that you've been giving me in this project. Should I just give a brief background? I know that we did discuss this at the February meeting, so I'm happy to just jump into fielding questions, or, giving a little bit of background is fine as
Let
well.
me ask, are people familiar with the project, or would you like her to give you a little?
I was on vacation, so I would appreciate,
Sure.
and if you could let me know who you are.
Oh,
Fiona?
yes, absolutely. Sorry, I should have
Town
led with
planner.
that.
I figured that, but I just wanted to, if anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Fiona Coughlin. I'm the new town planner in Grafton. I've been here about 3 months. So this has been particularly interesting, getting up to speed with the Institute Woods project. So this effort began back in 2018 for a variety of reasons, but namely there was concern with propane facilities and the Grafton-Upton Railroad in the proximity to North Grafton Elementary School. That wasn't the only reason that this project was pushed forward, but it was definitely one of the driving forces. VHB was since contracted by the town planner at the time to create a feasibility study, which was drafted, went through a little bit of a little bit of time had passed since that was finalized. When I began, I did finalize that plan. However, the 3 concepts that were generated from said plan were, upon evaluation, quite expensive, and 2 were outdated. There was a 3rd concept that we're working with and having ongoing discussions with Pulte to create a access point through parcel C of the Village at Institute Road / Woodland Hill now subdivision, which is still very much a viable option. However, upon conferring with town volunteers, board members, and staff, we think that this feasibility study, for all the reasons that I laid out, needs to be looked at again, especially in terms of from a maintenance perspective, as well as alternate concepts and maybe some more affordable options for the town to pursue, as well as the emergency access component of this. The trail's primary use is a shared use path that is for walking, biking, etc. And it is, but again, it is also going to be used as emergency evacuation route. So just with one, I went back to VHB and I explained to them, the feasibility study in its first iteration was inadequate. We need to reassess, have another site walk, evaluate the conceptual designs, and then update that study to be more current and in line with the priorities of the town today. And that is where we are at now. I did apply for a Mass Trails grant earlier, about a couple of months ago, which I will not be finding out about until I believe May, but just to be fully transparent with other efforts that are ongoing with this application. Since the February meeting, I did solicit comments from the school department, police, and fire, which I did. I sent to Joanne. I know she circulated, so thank you for doing that. And I also did have a conversation with Pulte about the options for them contributing to this. The project manager did say that he had begun those discussions. I did touch base with him on Monday, and I did not hear back yet, but I will continue to follow up in that regard. So that's my very long-winded explanation. So happy to answer any
For
questions.
the Mass Trails grant, is that a matching grant? And
Yes.
is that strictly for the feasibility?
The Mass Trails grant would be at the application was the design and engineering piece.
So it would be the next step.
Yes, yeah, ultimately. There is a match. It is a 25% match, which would be likely staff hours in kind.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee?
One of the things that the police and fire both brought up was maintenance of the trail. And what struck me most was that in order for it to meet the emergency use purposes, it would have to have the snow cleared all winter long.
Right,
And so the question would be, who would be doing that?
right.
And how?
Yeah,
Because that would have some effect on the how it was constructed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I did follow up with VHB about that to confirm that discussion was had in the past. Final responsibility was not designated. However, when I would guess that would be the town's responsibility.
And would they use a snow blower to do it?
Probably some sort of like heavier machinery, depending on the width and the maintenance needs.
Is that getting a big snowplow on that would be, I don't know,
Difficult.
difficult. Yeah, difficult, that's the word.
It'd be almost like the sidewalk.
Like a bobcat or
snowblower.
something.
Yeah, the ones they use for the sidewalk, which is like a bobcat, yeah.
Because if it were not, if it were covered with snow, its purpose as a emergency exit route would be moot. And, if it weren't maintained regularly, spending all that money to make it suitable for an ambulance or whatever would be wasted.
Right. No,
So-
that's a great point, and I appreciate that. I think that if we were to pursue this update, the maintenance would be finalized in this iteration more clearly than it was in the first version of the feasibility study, which, again, my knowledge of that was that it was, and upon conferring with VHB, that it was mentioned but never finalized, so that it would definitely be something that we would finalize
As part of
as
this
part of this
study.
update. Right.
So just for clarification,
No, you go first.
Going through the woods and with a kind of a street ambulance is not, there's too many things that happen on a wooded trail that would prevent a regular vehicle to go through there. Are they envisioning this as being like an ambulance going through there, or is it really a truly an emergency evacuation route where the intention is for someone to go on foot, or you're talking about evacuation of a school.
Right.
So I guess I'm unclear on the design criteria for a vehicle going over there.
Right. It is my understanding that it would need to be wide enough to allow an ambulance to get through in the event of an
It's a
emergency.
very different design and
I-
different cost.
I would say my read from, kind of the combination between fire and police was that, they would extremely prefer it to be able to support an ambulance in case there is a medical emergency in the trail area while they are doing an evacuation or something along those lines, so they can get in there to get, to have that access to be able to, exfiltrate someone that would need that assistance.
The order of magnitude cost difference is
It could be,
is
huge.
significant. If you're gonna
Huge, yeah.
support an ambulance, it's a full base, it's a very different design
I agree.
than a trail.
Fiona, what would you say is the primary purpose for this?
The primary purpose would be the recreation path itself. However, I do understand how the conversations about it serving as an evacuation route and that being one of the initial driving forces can kind of be confusing. But really, it is the intent and my understanding. Again, coming into it late, but the primary purpose would be a shared use path for residents and visitors, with the secondary use being the emergency access available if needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? One of I think it was the police chief that talked about the switchbacks,
Right.
which would dramatically affect the design because for him to use that as an emergency exit or pathway, you couldn't have those and have a large vehicle make those. So is that something that's going to be studied? That's what
Right.
to study, because it
Exactly.
would have to just kind of go straight up a hill, but then maybe you'd have to have two, because you've got people that may not be able to, if they're in a wheelchair, you're pushing kids in a wheelchair, or
Right.
little kids, because they're all little kids in that school, holding hands or in a group. That they can't just go straight, they would need that switchback.
Right, yeah, we would need to study we need to evaluate our options. We did have conversations about rerouting to two different areas as well that they weren't in the original feasibility study, and the exit wouldn't be through that parcel C sliver that's heads out to Village Institute Road, but there is another entryway that's further south in the subdivision that Concom is deeded to Concom when will be deeded to Concom, that we're looking at, as well as Old Sawmill Road, which is directly south. So, you know, again, I know that there, and I appreciate the questions. They're all very good questions, and I think this project really, it's a worthwhile one. However, there are a lot of outlying questions that I think we really need to finalize with VHB and our alternatives, and have a new updated cost estimates for what those options are. And I think, you know, for that reason, I think it would be a worthwhile project, and also would fulfill two, important purposes in town. But I do understand your questions.
The original study was, I think, $4,000, and this one's now
14.
it was 14,000. So we're basically spending that again.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah,
are we gonna
this-
get that much more information? Are they just gonna, I know there's a lot that they're gonna have to pull together.
Right, yeah, no, this will essentially be, an update, an updated analysis with a little bit more than, what was done the first time. A little bit, getting more detailed into the logistics and, the teeing it up to actually be ready for the next phase. So it goes a little bit beyond the original application that was submitted in 2018. However, I do understand your concerns. I think they're valid, and the goal would be to have this much in a finalized place, as opposed to the first time where it was a lot of, again, outlying questions that weren't answered, and there was not as much clarity.
And would this have to go out to bid, or would this
Eventually, yes.
consultant get it?
VHB has been our consultant and would be responsible for the update. That's my understanding.
So you don't have to go out to bid for this?
I don't believe so, no.
Just for a comment, not to be a downer, but I don't think it's a worthwhile cause. And I don't think spending another $14,000 on a plan to bring a road through there makes any sense. Or the town's not gonna, I don't think, is gonna fund access like that. When this first came out, as you said, it was about the propane, and they were trying to get people out of there. And there was a lot of people anxious about what was going on. We've been with the propane for a while now. If a pathway, even a pathway, that benefits Pulte. We have plenty of developments near schools that we don't build pathways for the development. I'm not opposed if Pulte wants to build something through there that work with them to get that done, that would be great. But to spend $14,000 more to look at putting in a road that an ambulance, it's at $1 million, it's, I think, a waste of money. We're spending money on a park on North Street. People are all upset about how much that trail is. We voted down a park behind the library for $300, whatever the amount of money that was. And we're gonna spend $1 million to build a pathway behind the school so people from that neighborhood, can maybe go there. And if an ambulance, something happens, hopefully nothing ever happens. But I just think this is a fool's errand in some way. It started out with a good idea that maybe we should think about doing that. And it's become something that's just not tenable for the town to spend that kind of money to build an asphalt berm, however wide it's gotta be for, to then snow plow, to do all these things. I just don't see it happening, and I don't wanna spend, personally, I think spending another 14 grand trying to figure out if it has switchbacks or have this or have that, I don't think that's good money. Because it's just, I just don't see it being built. I don't think it's a good, now, anything can get built, but I don't think it's good use of money. CPC money or taxpayer, if we have to fund it any other way.
Okay, Ken, and then,
I think that most of the questions that have been raised just tonight have spoken to how much of this project is trail and how much of it is emergency access road. And that really, makes the speaks to the question that the committee has to answer is, how much of this is fundable under the CPA, and how much of it is not. If this were, if it's 90% trail and, rather if it's, 90% trail and 10% emergency access, then maybe that's a fundable project. But if it's 10% trail and 90% emergency access, then maybe it's only 10% applicable to the Community Preservation Act. So we really we would need to understand that, because this project looks like it's gonna be, no matter how you do it, it's gonna be $1 million. And that's a whole lot of money. That's, that's how much that's the CPC revenue for 2 years. And it's, or else it's a bond issue. For any $1 million projects the committee's done have been bonded. And that's a whole different, sized question for town meeting. But it seems like the way the project has morphed into, at least a 10-foot concrete road that needs to be plowed all the time by someone on someone else's budget, is maybe taking it out of applicability for CPA funds.
So he's pretty much expressing what I was going to say. I asked you a specific question, what do you thought the primary use would be? And if you look at it from the perspective of how many times it's going to be needed to be used for an emergency route versus how many times people could use it for recreation, I would agree with you. But because of the purpose that you're talking about, it is driving up the cost of the project way beyond what it would cost to have a regular recreational trail there. And that gets back to Ken's point, what percentage differentiation do we have with that? How much more does it cost? And will we be able to maybe fund some of it? But I just don't see this as ever being able to be fully funded by CPA funds.
Anybody else?
I just have a quick comment. I kind of almost echoing what Brooke said. I think, except for, I think this is a wonderful concept. And even though, this board has sat on the 1.1 for a while, and it's only 18, but at the same time, like you said, the research that's going to go into it is going to lead to a massive project. And like I said, I just want to echo, it's a wonderful concept. I used to, walk out of North Grafton Elementary all the time, walk down that road, but I just don't see, if it's going to benefit, for the time being, mostly that one housing development going into it, yeah, wonderful concept. I don't know if it's for our money, though.
Any other? Kristen?
Am I remembering correctly that the comments from the superintendent were, it's most likely that they would shelter in place in the
Yes.
time of emergency anyways? They wouldn't even be evacuating the building in that situation, so that kind of...
Yeah, and how far down the path do they evacuate? There's a lot of questions with that, too.
Right.
Not to be like, if it's that bad, people are just gonna be like.
Right. Parents are gonna be
Yeah, I mean,
driving over there
ambulance,
wherever.
It's gonna be like,
Yeah.
things are falling from the sky.
Sandy?
Yeah, just to kind of, I think having, a trail out there is great. There's already trails out there. They're actually kind of chewed up because of off-road things, vehicles and stuff. But it's a nice area back there, and there's a lot of connections and connecting it out to Institute Road and those type of things. That's all great, and I think that's much more manageable, and people can get their heads around that. But once you start adding function to it and you change the design, I think that's where everyone is just having question whether it's even feasible or not, but, so.
Yeah, understandable.
Okay. Justin?
Sure. I'm gonna say that I at least see the recreation use, and to me, funding the feasibility study to at least identify, is this just completely untenable to have it be an evacuation route, but we can do this cheaper as a just recreation, or or what can we do here?
But we already paid for that once.
That one wasn't really you know, that accurate. There's contradictions, as
That's
Ken
Pulte
said last
to pay
week.
for
Got too old,
But
But Pulte paid
but we
for it.
did, but it's got
The-
too old.
you know, the point for me is that, yeah, I do see the value in at least this part of it. If it is $1 million thing and the trail will cost like $10,000, numbers out, you know, my elbow on this one, but you know, if that is like that much of a difference, yeah, I would agree that it probably shouldn't be, you know, CPA fund at least, you know, more than that $10,000 or whatever. But I think it's a feasibility, you know, study to update this, make sure we have, you know, all the data on, you know, like what it would take to have it meet those emergency needs versus, you know, not, you know, that kind of thing is something that we could still have a lot of value in, we could still find as a town value in using as recreation. It sounds like I'm gonna be the minority vote on this point, but I do think that at least bringing it forward to town meeting as, you know, this updated plan, you know, expressing what's going on at town meeting, and, you know, the town may just go, we're looking at $1 million budget, if we do it as an emergency thing, let's not do it at all. They could, you know, that could happen. But I think, at least for me, I'm in favor of bringing it forward for this part of it to town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other last comments? Okay, you can stay or you can leave. You don't have to stay.
Okay.
That didn't sound
Whatever,
okay.
whatever's preferred. I can, yeah, I can.
We've got two more
I can
people.
leave you.
Oh, we
that
just took
are-
something off your plate, so you should be happy. That's good.
Haven't yet.
Yeah.
We have
I was gonna say, wait, not yet. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Whatever.
two more speakers so that if you want to, because we will vote on these,
Okay.
you know, within the hour. So if you wanted to stay, but you
Yeah.
don't have to, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I'll stay. That's okay.
I have a quick question that just popped up. I mean, can we get a pared down feasibility study that's only focused on the trails, or is that even needed at this point?
So when I was discussing this, the original ask was significantly higher, and I was able to discuss with VHB to get it down to what it is now. Getting it any lower,
But the scope does include the road analysis still.
yeah, right, yeah, it includes the site walk conceptual designs, updated study, and you know, ancillary meetings, coordination, things of that nature, the administrative side of things.
So, in order for them to do that, they have to know what it is they're designing. So the decision needs to be made before they do that, whether it be a 10-foot wide road or something more, something smaller and more permeable and less expensive. Because they're gonna come up with a design, excuse me. If they're going to come up with a design, they need to know what it is they're having, they need to have made the decision, or someone needs to have made the decision on what it's going to be.
Right.
Yet, it sounds like we don't know what it's going to be yet.
But Ken, I don't want to belabor this, but haven't they picked the route? Isn't that what we kind of need? I mean, what else do we need?
We need, well, there's the route is one thing, the other is what's the construction going to be? Is it gonna be concrete, 10 feet wide
Well, no,
concrete, or it's gonna be,
well,
or is it
from my
gonna?
standpoint, it is not going to be that.
But that's
If-
what, but that's
No, I
what
get
this
that.
company is pointed at designing.
No, I understand that, but to Eric's point, if we already have a document, it already has the route, I mean, what else would we need? Because all the rest of the stuff is the berm and the concrete and the this and the that.
Yep.
We're not gonna do any of that stuff, and again, I think Pulte should have something to do with this, because they're the only beneficiary of this whole plan.
You're right about that.
So,
You know,
so yeah, just kind of one follow-up. You mentioned that, I understand in the original one, they had designated where they would meet the subdivision.
Right.
And now they're looking at an alternative location?
Yes, so I had talked to our conservation agent about parcel E, which is further south as an option that, you know, when we were considering what would be cheaper and more feasible, you know, because as you know, as mentioned earlier, the two of the three concepts that came out of the original feasibility study were just not able to be pursued.
Right.
So we kind of went back to the drawing
So
board.
like, going back to Justin's kind of comment about just doing the, you know, study, we don't need to do a restudy. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me at all. If you're talking about something that's substantially more constructible because the slopes are not as severe,
Right.
then there might be a value to it, but I would want to make sure that, you know, one of the main things they look at isn't this kind of elevated function as a road, but as a trail. That, you know, whatever they do is a trail, and I would say, you've already paid for the connection, that C, whatever the lot C, why would they need to do anything else at that location? So I would want to make sure that whatever you get out of a study is something very discrete and that can be used and can fall underneath CPC, so.
But, you know, one concern is that the consultant, you know, could go and fine tune the route of the trail to minimize the, you know, the construction needed to get up the elevations.
Yeah.
But then the next thing they're gonna do, and probably the bulk of the study, is to design the highway. And I don't think any of us are
Yeah,
sure
just-
that we want
Yes,
the
the highway's a lot.
I guess it's just having done these kind of studies, you know, when you're doing these type of studies and it's conceptual, and I'm sorry if I know this is gonna not sound great, if you're only spending $8,000 to do a study,
18.
18? Really? Okay.
18,500, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Is
That's
Then
top
I'm not gonna say anything then. I thought it was 8, so that,
Okay, any
Okay.
other comments? Okay, thank you, and I will have Jen Anderson, who is the recreation director for all those, for Jack, who's new.
Thank you.
She's a regular here.
Do I have to introduce myself this time? Or just for the record?
just for the record.
You should put a piece of paper in front of you that says Jennifer. because
We should
that's
have
how
little
we see you
signs.
on Zoom.
So I try to wear my, Jen Anderson, Recreation Director. So I have to get back in here. Gotta log back in, actually. So same thing as Fiona. I mean, would you like me to run through the request in full detail? Or do we?
Yeah, not everyone was here, so
There are a
that's
couple
probably a good
that
idea.
were not here, so would you like her to give you a little?
A brief one, I looked at the emails and stuff, so
Okay.
a brief
Or the,
one,
the packet?
yeah.
So what we're looking to do is to put in an inclusive playground at Norcross Park. An inclusive play space welcomes people of all abilities to play, learn, and grow together in a place that goes beyond minimum accessibility. The current playground is in need of replacement for the age 2 to 5 structure. It was damaged in a storm last spring, and the age 5 to 12 structure is at the end of its useful life. So we're looking at this timing to be a fortuitous opportunity to improve, expand, and upgrade the play opportunities there. It's our largest, and most central playground in town. We most likely would not have this opportunity at our other playgrounds due to its small footprint or nature in the wetness of it. And so, again, doing this at once, we'd be able to streamline the resources to fund the design, purchase the equipment with its freight, and install. We would be doing the poured in place rubber surfacing for a majority of the parcel. And so, again, with that one install, we're going to lessen the timeline, the closure portion of the playground, and also keep not increasing the cost. So we're meeting all 6 of the CPC's general evaluation criteria. We're meeting multiple in the category-specific criteria of open space and recreation. We are also meeting the priorities of your overall plan goals, portions of the open space and recreation plan goals, and the state's open space and recreation plan goals, and the ADA transition plan objectives. So we are asking you for, well, I'll tell you, review the amenities again. So we're gonna have equipment there for ages 6 months to 12 years. It's gonna be the first location in town that would have equipment for ages 6 months to 24 months. It's gonna have accessible and inclusive components. Like I said, with the poured in place rubber, there's be multiple standalone pieces and an inclusive spinner. There'll be seating and a shade structure there as well. The total project cost is just shy of $400,000. We'll be able to bring to the table $170,000. That is $10,000 in-kind work by DPW with the site prep and the removal of what's currently there. The capital budget is earmarked for $100,000, and then we have insurance money from the damaged structure there of $60,000 as well. So what we'd be really requesting for you specifically is $227,691.83 cents. And so we don't have a screen here tonight, have you? But I do have some pictures if anyone wants to see. Pass around my laptop, or hopefully have that packet there that you've been able to throw your eyes on.
I did not make a copy of the packet for everyone,
But I didn't think of that
have-
either, because I'm usually like sharing the
know, well,
screen,
I
so
hate
I didn't think of
When
it.
I make the copies, they go, oh, all the paper you wasted, and then when I don't.
Oh.
I think, I'm just throwing you guys under the bus.
Jen?
And we did
Also-
just get a letter of
Yeah,
support from
in the
the
packet I have-
disability.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you about. Could you just, I know you met with them last week, can you just kind of share what their thoughts were?
Yeah, they obviously very happy that we're moving forward with something like this. The question that they had asked was looking into adding another handicap swing. And so I didn't get that information until today, but we do have the space for that. It'd be about another $5,000. I think that I can fund that in other ways, so I'm not gonna change the request to CPA.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So,
Um,
I apologize, but I can't find the exact wording that I was asked us since the last meeting, but it was mentioned to me that poured rubber surfacing may not be the ideal current, solution for this type of thing. There's, I don't know if you're aware of that, or if the person that that told me was wrong, or what, but I just wanted to know, just to bring it up.
I would welcome where the reference came from.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was trying to find it just
there's
now.
You
things
need
that
to let the
people,
school know, because that's what they're gonna do at South Grafton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was just
Yeah.
looking up to find out where it was from. I can't find it right now.
Is that because of durability, or what was the
I-
basis behind that?
I think it had to do with just, durability over the longevity of it, from what I,
well, I think that's the same as anything. I think it's, when you look at artificial turf,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a 10-year thing. This should be, 15
Yep.
years, 10 to 15 years. Some people would do maybe an artificial turf, but this is definitely the surface that anyone would move forward with for a project like this.
I heard it once, and I was trying to find where it was, because I meant to mention it tonight, but I
Sure.
couldn't find
Sandy?
it. And then-
Yeah, I mean, it's very common. We do a lot of work at different parks and at different schools and stuff, so it's very common. There are a couple other things that are probably a little bit more sustainable out there, but those are more relatively new. But, yeah, it is, you're right. When you do an artificial turf field, it's, it says 15 years, but you might have a 5-year warranty, but whatever. But, I mean, it is very common, and is maintenance and everything else, just like anything that you put in.
Mhm.
But it's pretty common. I haven't heard that.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
there are
I'll-
some other alternatives.
I'll try to find the information for myself for later, but it'll be past this meeting, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
Did the Disability Commission raise any concern with the service?
No, he referenced the park in Worcester on Cliffwood? Yes, thank you, which I'm familiar with, and he was like, what's that surface? I'm like, that's what this is. So, they were happy about that.
Great.
And
Yeah.
just second question, which is probably gonna be very simple. Has anything changed in your proposal since our last meeting? Okay.
Okay, thank you. And again, you're welcome to stay if you would like to stay.
But yeah, because if questions come up, I want to be able to,
Yeah.
but.
And then, Eric, you don't have to, you're good right where you
Oh, in
are.
front of the tribunal?
Yep.
The Tribune.
We're not Finance Committee.
All right.
How's that?
So,
That service.
was anybody not on the meeting? I guess maybe Jack, I can give you.
I've got most
You're
of
probably
it.
familiar with
Yeah.
it because you're on the housing authority.
Yeah.
but, So just at a high level, the request was for $10,000 to be sent to an account established by the Affordable Housing Trust with the purpose of providing emergency rental assistance for Grafton Housing Authority renters. This was, generated from conversations with Jim Gallagher, who's on the Housing Authority, and had conversations with him and the executive director about situations where current renters of the Housing Authority properties do fall behind on rent, despite it being heavily subsidized. And both Jim and Amanda, the executive director, felt that, 10,000 was an appropriate amount. Kind of, it's tough to figure out, how much exactly they're gonna need, but that felt like a good number. So that's the request at a high level. It's fairly simple, straightforward. There's no construction. It's a, rental assistance account. And I did get answers to a bunch of the questions that were asked last time,
Can
so.
I just say something real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah, go ahead, of course.
The biggest thing isn't as much people falling behind on their rent. The biggest thing is when people come in, they're on waiting lists for months, sometimes years, and they've been spending every dime they have trying to stay in their home. So when they come, they finally hit that point in the waiting list, they're accepted, they don't have the money for their first month's rent payment. And they just don't have the money. And that would be, if I had to say, that would be the primary go button for this fund, would to say, you've made it in. We clearly see you are, upstanding. The income you do have would be suitable for living here, but you just have been trying to make ends meet for so long, you don't have that first month.
So do you do a first, last, and a security, or just a first month?
I believe it's just first months. Yeah, it's just first months.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Amanda had confirmed that as well.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I can, if you want, just answer some of the questions that came up last time.
Oh, sure.
So thankfully, I have the meeting minutes, so I can just address them exactly as they were asked. So this is really convenient, Joanne. All right, so I'll just start off. John, you had asked about like what the average monthly rent payment was, just to kind of help figure out if, the 10,000 would be adequate. So I'll just read off the responses from Amanda, the executive director. So she said, it's difficult to say as individual incomes vary. So the way that the rent is established for somebody is it's 30% of their gross annual income. So given that, she said it's a little bit difficult to say, but they have rents that range from $200 a month to $1,000 for elderly and disabled sites. And family sites, with dual or more incomes, can be up to $1,600. So, as you would expect, the rents are not very high. And just kind of thinking through that, she said the average is about 500. So, if 20 people can't make that first month's rent, then we're covered for the year. That's $10,000. So,
And it's not gonna be every person that comes in that can't make first month's rent, we're gonna give it. That's not gonna be the case.
Can I ask a quick question just for the minutes? Amanda's last name?
Brady.
Yep.
B-R-A-D-Y.
Yeah, follow-ups, anything?
Fiona?
How are you going to designate how many families versus how many elderly disabled applicants? Like, do you have a
We,
strategy in place?
we have, of the 170 units, we have 16 family complexes. So it's gonna be case-by-case basis, but I would assume there would be, just based on pure numbers, fewer families getting assistance just by the fact that there are fewer families living.
Go ahead. Any others?
Yeah, I can just keep going. There were questions around it's subsidized rent. So what are the actual scenarios where they would need it? Jack just came up with one. Amanda did confirm that if they lose their source of income, which would not be common generally, they're on some sort of assistance program, but Amanda did say about 20% of the residents do have jobs that fund the, their income that determines the rent. So in those scenarios, they could lose their job. The rent does go to zero at that point. So income loss would generally not be a scenario where this would happen. It would be, again, the one that Jack mentioned, but then she said that, some of the things I guessed at in the last meeting, she confirmed. So medical bills, family emergencies, helping a family member or death of a family member, sometimes a vehicle needs repair or replacement, and then elders sometimes losing track of their budgeting and getting behind. They're on a fixed income. At that point, what do they do?
So Eric, can I just ask you, so you're not saying that this money will go to those things? You're saying if they've gone and but I guess it would be going to these things. If they're giving money to their son or whatever it is, and they don't have the rent money, then they could apply for this rent money. I know what you're saying, medical bills, car things, but,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. So
I
it's
mean,
not-
there's
it wouldn't
there's
go
no
to pay
way.
those bills, it would only be if they come back in the rent.
It leads to
Yes,
the
they
need.
lost the money, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're trying to play whack-a-mole with the bills, and
Right, 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 yeah.
they have to pay for a funeral expense.
So
they're
at
like,
least
"Hey,
they
I'm
would
gonna
have the
do that."
rent covered, they wouldn't lose their home
Yeah.
and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's this similar thing with the COVID stuff, right? Like, hey, I lost my job, and I have 10,000 in my account. They have to like make a choice on what they're paying, and eventually it just keeps going down, and they need assistance.
And I'll make an assumption, you can tell me if this sounds right too, is that if a elderly person did say, oh, here, kids, you can have all my money, and then they can't pay the rent, they'd apply, they could apply.
Yep.
But then they'd still have to explain why they don't have the money.
Exactly.
And if it was just because they're giving the money out to their kids and there's no real reason other than they just giving it, or whatever, then there's, it can be denied.
Yeah.
That would become a different conversation.
Yeah, so, as part of the administration of this, the executive director still has to follow all the rules and regulations of the CPA, DHCD, all that stuff. So hardship has to be documented. And, if she gets an application and, it doesn't look like it's adequately documented, then she can deny. And she
So
would have to.
she's just gonna invoice you, and then you
We would pay.
reimburse them, so you don't have any dealings at all with
Exactly.
the family or the individual.
Yep.
You're just providing the fund that then the housing authority then applies to their account. So
And an even further step, just for reassurance, the Grafton Housing Authority has no contact with tenants. So we won't be meeting and deciding as a board. This is Amanda as the employee, the executive director, making those decisions.
Okay. Fiona?
So the representative at DHCD will be the one responsible for determining if the hardship is
No, Amanda would be in charge of determining it.
Amanda.
Brady, the executive director at our housing authority.
Oh, okay, got it.
There were some questions about like administration. So this has been done before. Thank you to Joanne for finding that information. So somewhat of a similar setup is being done on Martha's Vineyard. It's administered by the housing authority out there. They, from my reading of it, it's not their housing. They're reimbursing landlords, like private landlords that qualifying residents need rental assistance on. But there's precedence of a housing authority administering something like this. There's also one in Eastham, I think, in Cape Cod as well. So we wouldn't be the first, but there's not a whole lot of these examples on the CPA website. So it'd be great to get Grafton up there too if this is successful.
It's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think that's, you answered all the questions.
And if it's not enough in 6
Great
months,
idea.
at the next town,
Oh, you had a
you
question,
can
Paul?
get more, yes.
Sorry, Paul.
Paul, did you?
I just said it's a great idea.
Oh,
I just said, it's not,
Kristen?
And
agree with you.
the last time we discussed, it's $10,000 goes into their account.
Right.
If it isn't used, then it sits there until it is, and then you come back for more money once it's depleted.
Yeah, we're not gonna be,
So it wouldn't even be like a annual guaranteed
yeah.
thing. Like if there's no applicants that year, it just sits there and collects interest.
So, good point. Do we need to sunset this then, which on our warrants, we've decided to change the language to where we would extend it internally rather than having to go to town meeting for that. That if this turns out to be that you really don't need the money, it's a great idea, but nobody's having that problem. I mean, we don't wanna,
To that point, the draft warrant article does say expended by June 30th, 2025.
okay, so it does
That's
have.
because Joanne cuts and pastes a lot.
No, I suspected that.
But you wouldn't have to go through town meeting again
we can
for it.
still-
We
yeah,
can
that's
do
a
it
good point.
internally.
I don't
So
know, I mean, I would say the longer the better for that point, but also, in the event that it is not used.
But the
there's
problem
a-
is that we are giving them the money is transferred. So even though that language says must be expended by, I don't know what the mechanism is to say, okay, you didn't spend that money.
I believe the money is actually being given to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that it's getting transferred. It's
Yeah.
no longer in our account.
What
It's not
was
on
the-
this spreadsheet.
What was the way it was
It's on-
returned for the COVID thing, though? Because, I mean, that was like 200,000 and not even.
That was a
close.
sunset.
Oh, didn't, it was a separate account. I think it was a CPA. Yes, that money never formally went to the trust.
Got it, okay.
It stayed as a CPA,
Because you got bills and
Account.
then you would have to,
and Natalia
transfers.
processed all of those.
Okay.
Who's this back there? Just using that account.
Okay.
So can you just
how's it-
change the language, say to be expended or returned by blah, 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 25, and then
Yeah, whatever
reauthorize
the
it in 25?
Phrasing
Yeah.
is. when
There's,
it's like-
is there a reason, I don't mean to interrupt, but is there a reason why it couldn't be a CPA account with $10,000 in it that's accessed by the trust?
Trying to
and you
remember.
just
Just
send
like
us
any
the
other
bill.
project,
Is it-
you have an invoice, you
Yeah.
submit it, and you
I couldn't tell you.
it-
Jim seemed to think that that was the way to
That
go,
it needed
but I
to
don't know
go
why.
Is there any sort of time discrepancy? The only thing I can think of is if it's in an account held by here and well, I guess we are in charge of rent,
Yeah,
so it's
you're
not
in
like we're
charge of
gonna kick them out, but
Right.
I guess that might be only timeliness may be the only concern, but if the easiest way to do it is to keep it in a fund so that, say, like you said, say no one asked for this, and they say, nope, we're all good. First of all, we're not gonna come back and say, well, you already gave us 10,000, let's just get another 10,000, just make this a yearly thing, we're not gonna do that. But if the easiest way to do it is put it in a CPA fund, so that it can easily be returned, or whatever the case may be, it can easily be refunded if we use it all, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think we're fighting over nonsense about
Yeah.
this, because in the end, so nobody uses it for 2 years, that doesn't mean someone's not gonna use it in the 3rd year,
Yeah.
or the 7th year, or the 12th year. I mean, it's $10,000, it's not a lot of money, so just.
The problem
let it-
is that we have to keep track of it.
Well-
CPC has to keep
Okay,
track of it.
then we'll
and
keep
report
track of
that
it.
to the state, which,
Okay, well, it'll be the same line item every year, there it is.
okay, easier said than done if you haven't done it.
I have not done it, so it is easier to
Mr.
say.
Badger.
So-
Yeah, well,
Would it be easier for that than to just straight up give the money?
I
Would that
think
be
it would be easier to do it with an account. That's what we're familiar with. That's what
Yeah.
every other project does, so.
And money gets dispersed easily.
Very quickly.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
my only question on this particular point, do we need to reword in some way the warrant article to do that? I know we're not on our agenda yet, but I'm just trying to think.
I didn't read the actual wording. Where is it?
It just says appropriate some.
It just says to establish a rental assistance program for Grafton Housing Authority. It doesn't say where that money is gonna sit. So to me, that is the typical language that we use,
Yeah.
that it sits,
If this, yeah,
I just
If
making
this-
sure.
yeah.
if this goes to the town accountant, they'll do exactly what.
She'll just set
what
up an
Paul just
account.
said.
If we were gonna do something different, then I would say we would have to have the wording in there.
Perfect.
So it's-
Just wanted to
okay.
make sure we're good.
No?
Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Patchett says, move along.
Move along.
Okay, so no further discussion. So at this point, we will vote on the 3 articles. For the Institute Woods, do I have a motion on that project?
I move that we pass the grant that's listed in the grant, the sheet, to see if the town will appropriate the sum of $18,500 from the Community Preservation Act budgeted reserve.
So, but are you saying pass over?
No, I'm saying, I'm proposing that we, that we do it.
What
Okay.
we can
It's-
do
it-
here,
but
if
it's not the
it's all right, sometimes it gets really confusing. Can you guys just vote on whether you want to take the projects to town meeting? And then in the next item on the agenda, hash out the wording of the warrant articles, is that okay? Because otherwise, the motion's getting a little wacky.
Okay.
Is that-
So
that's
I move,
what I was-
I move we take it to town meeting.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second on the Institute Woods Trail. Any other further discussion?
Yes. The contents of the report are to do a site walk with the parties that are, the interested parties, and to get them out there and to do the site walk and to choose a route that presumably would meet the requirements that they decide on doing. And I think that the 18,005 is a little high by about $5,000. I think there's some items that are listed here that probably aren't needed. In particular, one of them says evaluate a additional path to Old Sawmill Road, which will just make the project more expensive. I would think that should be dropped.
It's not,
That's just gonna, you know,
What's
they're
proposed?
going to do work that costs us money
but
that's
we're-
never gonna happen.
you've moved
I know, I have.
18,500 that
I
includes
have.
that.
It does include that. And it's gonna do a design, and it says maybe do the Sawmill Road one if it's considered feasible. As far as the lay of the land goes, it is feasible, but it's not feasible that we'd actually do it. But, so, there's a few things in here that would drive the cost of the project up by a couple of $1,000s. But disregarding that, I think it'd be a good idea to do this, and in addition to what they're doing, they ought to specify clearly what fraction of the usage and what fraction of the cost is related to recreation and what fraction is related to emergency use. And that will clarify for the future what parts of the project might be fundable by CPA.
Okay, I guess I'll add my comments at this point.
So anyway,
that
so I'm recommending that we
I
do
would be
it to
concerned
clarify
that we're
things.
spending $18,000 on a plan that we pretty much know will never be brought to town meeting. So why are we spending this money?
I feel like Justin here for a second. You don't even have a second for discussion.
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
I
you
said-
did?
I said
Oh, you
second.
did? Okay,
You're
sorry.
excused,
I
Mr.
really like
Padgett.
Justin, sorry.
So I think this is a great idea. I agree with a lot of what's been said, but I think it has morphed from a path to a road, which requires a whole lot more expense in its construction and maintenance. And it's not as recreation as much a recreation project as it's being designed to be an emergency road. So I would think even if we spent this money, if we took it to town meeting, it's gonna be $500,000 or $1 million. I really don't think town meeting, and that's part of our job, is proposing projects that will pass at town meeting, that we believe the community will support. I have a hard time believing people will support this because we don't have that much money. If we bond it, that means we have that much less for other projects that are fully CPC projects. So I have a motion, second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So 1, 2, 3. 3 in favor, all those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do I get a vote?
Yes.
Should I vote?
Yeah.
I'm opposed. So it's,
Why would you not vote? Sorry.
it's 3 in favor and 6 opposed. So I declare that motion failed.
This is one of our first not unanimous votes.
Well, that's good. That's good.
And in the future, I'd like to see something if it was a trail,
Right.
as opposed to everything
Or
else
even a
mixed
study
in
of
it.
all those trails in that area, to make it not just be.
Yep.
You
And
want
not
it to
to
have
beat the
a
dead horse,
broader
Pulte
application.
should be paying for this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paget. Moving
Well,
on.
It's just like,
Moving on.
They're looking to work with us, so.
Norcross Park.
I move that we recommend
Uh,
Norcross
I've gotta-
Park
hold on, before-
project to town
hold on.
meeting.
Hey, I can't take the minutes.
Brooke,
Hold on, I'm gonna
Brooke.
recuse myself before the motion's made, because I'm
Okay.
in the butter.
goodbye.
I second.
Norcross Park.
I move that we push forward Norcross Park to town meeting.
I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I declare that passed unanimously, 8-0,
Unanimously, there's one
Um,
abstention.
and 1 abstention, 1 recusal.
Yes, recuse.
Abutter.
Thank you.
Housing Authority rental assistance. Do I have a motion?
Should I recuse myself from this?
No.
You know.
You're not a
Just wanna make sure.
You don't financially benefit from it.
Just wanted to make sure.
Or
No, no,
do
good
you?
question.
Yeah, or do you?
I move that we push this forward to town meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a
Hey,
second.
hey, hey, I can't take the minutes when you're all talking.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a motion and a second.
That's where you just write crosstalk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I declare the motion passed unanimously 9-0. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for, I know you've worked a lot on that, and I just, feel bad for that. It's a good idea, but I think the way that it has grown, it is a little bit outside of our jurisdiction for funding.
Right, yeah, and no, I understand all the concerns that were brought up here are completely
Yeah.
valid, and, coming into it a little bit late too was an additional challenge.
If we were Wellesley, we would say, oh, sure, let's do it,
It's
but
not
we're not
hers.
Wellesley.
She inherited it, so don't feel that bad
So,
for her, you know.
I'd like to point out the third town planner, and she got it
Yeah.
done.
That's right. Actually, if you were like the other two planners, we wouldn't have had it. So, I mean, you pulled the Band-Aid off so it could heal and we can move on.
Awesome, well, thank you all, I really appreciate it, actually, I'm gonna head out if that's okay.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
You have to stay.
Okay. Jen, unless you want to stay, again, you're welcome to.
Yes.
And unanimous, 9-0.
Well, I'm on here. Thank you.
Take care.
We're spreading the word.
Okay, the next item is the Affordable Housing Trust request for fund transfer. Correct.
Oh,
Move.
The,
for the motion, you're on the warrant articles?
We're on number 5 on the agenda.
right, let me
I
find,
think Bruce
Oh.
already did that, right?
Yeah.
He skipped
Oh,
ahead.
yeah, he
Yeah.
did that. He already,
Yeah.
Bruce already did that.
so it's based, where's my other paper? Here. Trust. Okay,
One of the warrant
the
articles.
Affordable Housing Trust warrant article will transfer for $77,411, which is our annual transfer from the 10% reserve for affordable housing that will be transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried, 9-0.
So if the next one, the reserve one, you typically, well, I'm gonna leave it up to Paul as treasurer, how you wanna go forward with this. Do you wanna put numbers in here tonight? Do you wanna have the committee?
I only, just to update you,
We met
got
with
numbers.
Mary.
We
From the treasurer.
Had a
Met with
meeting
Mary.
on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so we do have some numbers that we can drop in now that are good numbers. There's a few that we have to wait, which are specifically the reserves, because we don't have those numbers from the state yet. So those 4 numbers will wait, but the others, we have numbers for all the others that are good numbers.
I can make a motion and you can thumbs up me or whatever if this sounds good, or I can reword it or whatever.
Okay,
I move that we approve this language for the CPC reserves warrant article with the amounts to be filled in by the town treasurer after discussion with the town accountant.
with the exception of,
I second it.
Yeah.
Now let's
okay,
discuss.
a discussion, we do have the number for the administrative expense, which is always $24,000. So that we can drop in. The others,
Doesn't matter. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
all the others
It's easier to do it now.
are blank. So, I have a motion, second. Any further discussion?
Who seconded it?
I did.
Second.
It was in.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, declare the motion carried unanimously, 9-0. Do you want to move on to the Pell Farm? Someone?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I think he, never mind.
Yeah, go.
No, didn't you
Okay,
already do it?
I move that we pass the Pill Farm bond payment warrant onto the town meeting as written, except that the amount is,
62,500.
Okay. Second.
So we have a motion for $62,500, Pell Farm payment, bond payment. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried, 9-0.
Okay, $62,500 for
yes.
Pell Farm.
Pell.
Correct.
Yep. The next is Grafton Townhouse bond.
I'll recuse myself from this one, even though I don't, it's no reason to, but I'm going to, so no one gets all
Okay.
worked up.
So this does have a little, we need to correct the language from
Okay,
the
so-
funding source. So why don't you?
So I'll move that we pass the Grafton Townhouse bond payment on to town meeting with the number $72,100, and the funding source be the historic reserve.
I'm gonna recuse myself from this one as well.
Okay.
Okay, wait, I
I'm
just
not
wanna
getting
check
out of my
something.
chair.
I usually walk out of the room, I thought you'd be done by now.
Okay, so from fiscal year, no
The
fiscal
historical
year.
review, historical reserve.
For the purpose of making.
Community preservation historical reserve. Historic reserve. Or is it historical?
Historic, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Historic,
You would be the source for that.
okay.
$72,100.
Got it.
Okay? All those in favor?
Wait,
Oh, wait,
I'm really sorry.
sorry.
Who seconded this? Ken?
I did.
Who did?
I did.
So a motion, a second, no further discussion.
I'm waiting to say yes.
All
so-
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed? Motion, I declare the motion carried 7-0 with 2 abstentions. Recusals. Okay, Affordable Housing Trust, we just did that. Oh, we did we approved it, but now we need the warrant, sorry.
So Institute Woods, we don't have.
We're on CPC Affordable Housing Trust warrant.
So this
Oh,
is,
no, my mistake.
so it's
Yeah,
good?
It's correct.
Okay. So this is the Affordable Housing Trust, the transfer, $77,411.
Did that, already did that.
So we did do that.
Did that.
The whole
Sanity
thing,
check.
okay.
The next one in your list is the Institute Woods
Yeah,
Trail.
Okay, so that one, we're passing over because
Right,
we
we
did
don't
not
need
approve
that.
it. The next is the recreation project. Do I have a motion for the $2,227,000, $692?
So I move that we pass the warrant as shown to the town meeting with the changes that the amount is $27,692,
227.
$227,692, and the fund is the budgeted reserve.
Second.
Is there a fiscal year before that budgeted reserve?
Sometimes. You can call it fiscal year budgeted reserve. The accountant doesn't use that
Fiscal year
term,
24.
but we do.
24 or 23?
24. Second?
So we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Who said that, Brooke?
I did, yep.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried 9-0 unanimously. The last article, Affordable Housing Trust.
All right, I'll do it. Since
Tran-
I'm sitting right here, I'll do it again. I move that we pass on the warrant for the Affordable Housing Trust as written on the sheet with the change that the amount is $10,000 and the source is the fiscal 24 budgeted reserve.
Second.
Any further question? Any other comments?
Do we, are we leaving the sunset as 25, or do we want to do like even a 5-year sunset on this one, or?
What would your, I mean, hopefully, I think you're gonna use this.
I think we
The
are
one
gonna
thing I
use
w-
it.
And remember, you have that new verbiage.
We can change
You
that
can change
sunset.
it, right?
At any committee meeting.
At
I
any
think we can
committee
keep it as is.
I'd like to see sooner than later if it's being used, and if you
Exactly.
need more money,
And
would be my
luckily,
thing, yeah.
I'm on both
Yeah.
boards, so I can tell you pretty quickly
Right.
how many applications we have at the jump, stuff like that.
And it's a committee decision now to extend it, so.
So we'll leave it at 25, that's 2 years, so you would
That
think.
should be it. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll see how it works by then.
No further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Having none, declare the motion carried Unanimously 9-0. Joanne was able to secure an estimate from Sunshine for 5 of the more permanent signs that would say Community Preservation Fund, CPA, Community Preservation Funds, at work in Grafton. And the total price is $378.65. Is this something that you want me to explore more? Do you want to wait on this?
You have a picture of it, or what's it made out of?
Metal.
What's ACM? Do we know what
Is
ACM
that
is?
what the
I think
ACM
I
is?
sent
It's like
you guys.
plastic.
An ACM sign, is that the
I thought I-
material?
So this is the email I got from Genevieve. After reviewing with my team, this is what we came up with for a more permanent temporary sign. She said, I love the good oxymoron. She did not send a picture. She said, these will be easy to move as needed, as you just need to hammer them into the ground and can pull them out easily, but will not be destroyed by inclement weather. She said, I used a metal signpost for them, as wood would deteriorate and be more difficult to get in and out of the ground.
PCM,
Like the old
aluminum
for sale.
composite material.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, those are good signs.
Like the old
Have a
for sale
picture of what it
signs
looks
that
like?
you used to see.
She did not. I had a picture that I had originally sent her that you all had seen of one that John found on the Cape.
There's one like it at the end of Carroll Road, at those
Yeah.
little townhouses. There's a for rent sign.
Well, I don't get what it's made out of. I want to know what it kind of looked like. Would it
Well, we
say-
would have to design it. I
Oh,
mean,
Yeah,
okay.
you'd have
So
to
you don't have the
it.
design
yeah.
already?
What I gave her, like I said, look, it's gonna be like 18 by 24. We're probably gonna want Grafton green,
Yeah,
white lettering.
Pretty simple
And
because
it's
it's,
simple. It just really says Community Preservation Funds, and then, this project's.
All right, so we're
Because
gonna have a look at it before it's.
it's
built.
gotta
Oh,
go
yes.
Okay, yeah.
apply to multiple projects, so we don't wanna have any real specific
I'm with
language.
you.
A lot of this quote was just so you guys could get the idea of, it's about $76 a sign.
And you're gonna get
Thank you,
multiple signs.
thank you, Joanne, this looks good.
Yes.
So let's just accept this and go forward on it.
Yes, I agree.
I agree as well.
I'll say.
We might get out of here before the second.
I like it. I think at that price, I'd be open to just doing 10 instead of 5 in case we need them more.
Okay.
And
Which will be stored at Joanne's house.
Well, why don't we order 5 in case Sunshine Sign makes a mistake on them?
Yeah. I can't imagine us needing 10.
but
Okay.
yeah,
So do I have a motion to move forward with acquisition of signs?
So moved.
so moved.
I have a motion
Motion.
by Brooke, second
Yep.
by Justin.
Can we get signs and hold them up?
Yeah.
Sorry.
The little flippers ones with the town meeting.
I'd rather have the little.
Any
buzzer-
further discussion?
buzzing first.
Hearing none that was relevant. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously,
Time to,
9-0.
to
Yes,
close.
yes.
We're not gonna go through each one of these things.
I move we adjourn.
Very good.
In the
Second.
spirit of Jim Gallagher, I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried 9-0.
8:30, that's good.